Good morning, everyone. My name is Okoroafor Christabel, and I am a Nigerian social work graduate from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And I am really happy and grateful to be given this opportunity to talk about a timely message on African identity and the future of Africans through the Ubuntu philosophy. So today we'll be talking about the Ubuntu philosophy, and with the title Understanding Ubuntu, one continent, different lives. So Ubuntu revolves around one word, that is community, who we are as people, who we are as Africans, finding our identity through our relationships. And this is something that has been there for across history, in fact, been there for years and through tradition. We can see that we have always talked about having kings, having age grades, peer this has been in African tradition and African culture for as long as Africa has been existing. And so we want to understand what it is like to be a person or have a sense of belonging through the community that you're surrounded by and through collective action as well. We also want to look at the different areas that Ubuntu covers, because certain people believe that Ubuntu does not cover the more modern or emerging issues. Also look at that as well. Um, we can see that it is very interesting how distance really affects us as human beings and how distance has continuously held our lives as Africans. I would like us to look at the course outline of this. That is the introduction of Ubuntu, Ubuntu history, Ubuntu values, principles of Ubuntu, Ubuntu ethics, Ubuntu theories, and Ubuntu in emerging or modern issues. Um, let's start with the saying that has been very, very, very popularized in Africa, especially in Nigeria here, where we hear that no man is an island. I feel like that hits the core of what Ubuntu is trying to bring to the attention of Africans, that you cannot be an island. You cannot be alone by yourself. You're made up of different things. You're a mosaic of different relationships that you have. And if we decide that, oh, yeah, it's not my business, I couldn't care less, it as well affects our identity as Africans, something that we have carried through generations, our folktales, our music, our proverbs, and that collectivity that we have as Africans. Now, Ubuntu is a Pan-African philosophy that is not limited to one nation or area. Ubuntu in itself is a South African word. It gets its roots from South Africa. However, you can see that in different countries, Nigeria, different countries in Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Congo, different countries in Africa, they have the same sentiment. They have words or proverbs or philosophy that also has the same sentiment that Ubuntu has as well. So it is a relational worldview. That means it's a worldview or a perspective that views our lives as humans through the perspective of relationships. And it believes that one's identity and sense of humanity is naturally derived from our social relationships and community, which is very true. In social work, we have what we call the systems theory. And the systems theory, you can see that we have the individual, you have your relationship with your family, you have your relationship with your peers, you have your relationship with the authorities, you have your relationship with social structures or institutions in your country. And whether we like it or not, these things affect us slowly. These things affect us one by one. And Ubuntu tries to bring that to our attention, that we cannot be an individual, we cannot be a person without considering or taking into consideration the different systems that make us who we are, different systems that contributed to our personality, that contributed to our individuality. Now, long before books, long before Ubuntu had lived, um, we have seen this in stories, we have seen this in folk tales, even told on that like moonlight. I think we've heard about like moonlight stories, children come out in the dark hours and they sit under trees. They listen to elders talking about like ancient legends or myths about maybe magic and mysteries. Ubuntu is one of those things as well that has been passed down from generations through stories and folktales, through the word of the mouth. One thing we know about African tradition and African culture is that it has always been passed down through stories, words of the mouth. I mean, it's like verbal tradition. So we can see that countries are across Africa spoke Ubuntu without using the word. And that's why I wrote it here, same sentiment, different fonts. Same sentiment, different fonts. It has the core values of Ubuntu, or it's probably in a different accent or in a different language, in a different dialect, but it's still the same. It still holds the core value of what Ubuntu is. Now, Ubuntu is not just a slogan, it is a philosophy that is woven deep into the African way of life. And by African way of life, we mean the African culture. It is what connects a grandmother to her grandchild. And grandmother to her grandchild can symbolize the ancient and the modern, the past and the present. And coming together, there's an evolution of progress that points to the future. And we can look at also it what connects the neighbor to a stranger, you being a good Samaritan, someone that you don't even know, someone that you don't even recognize. And it will connect people to the land beneath their feet. And that just brings to our thoughts that we also have an obligation and a duty to the environment. And there should be a sense of environmental justice, climate justice, and environmental consciousness. Now we can look at the history of Ubuntu. Ubuntu has lived, whether or not you like it, in your own traditions. Just check it in your own culture, whatever country that you're from. You can see that Ubuntu has lived in your philosophy, in the traditions. That's all. We have to come together. Like in Nigeria, I'm Igbo, so we have to come together in the August month or the month of August, where women have their August meetings. That collectivity, that collective action, that communal living. Now, Ubuntu is found all over Africa, but is known by different names. I've said that before, but most of which come from the word too. We're going to look at it very soon. You'll see the different words for Ubuntu in different countries, which means human. Two means human. It speaks to the deep truth that we become fully human only through others. Ubuntu was present in pre-colonial African societies where values like communal living were upheld. It emphasized collective well-being, dignity, and mutual support. Ubuntu was not formalized in African philosophy or academic philosophy until the 1980s. Like I've said before, Ubuntu has been orally given down or passed down from generation to generation. That sense of belonging, that sense of communal living has been passed down from generation to generation, but it wasn't until the 1980s that it became an academic philosophy. And like I said, it has always existed in oral traditions, proverbs, and ritual practices. Now, while we are looking at the history of Ubuntu, we need to look at the historical development of Ubuntu as well. We can see how Ubuntu, like many other African knowledge, has been orature-based before colonization. Ubuntu stepped into writing in 1980 with a Shona scholar, Sanlake Sankangi. I'm hoping I'm not butchering his name, but he's someone that framed it as a humanist and political philosophy for the post-colonial Zimbabwe. And that was the turning point for Ubuntu coming into academic philosophy. And then in 1993, Ubuntu was etched into the South African interim constitution, making it a legal compass. So we can understand that when the South African government felt like, oh, we've had a history of segregation against the Blacks, we need to use Ubuntu philosophy. You see it in the values of Ubuntu that there's a term where we talk about reconciliation, compassion, honesty, respect. And we can also see that in the TRC, that's the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So in 1996, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission rooted the commission's work in Ubuntu. He believed that reconciliation cannot come through vengeance, but through restored humanity. And you'll see me explaining more on the values of Ubuntu as we move on. So, like I said, Ubuntu across the continents. Now we're going to be looking into the different words that Ubuntu has across Africa as a globe or as a continent. The Ubuntu philosophy looks different across continents, but regardless of the name, they all bear the same sentiment. That is something that I have been repeating for the past few minutes, that it shares the same sentiments. Now we have Angola, we have the Gomuntu, we have Botswana, we have Ghana, the Biakoye, we have Burundi, also the same name, Ubuntu. We have Cameroon, that's the Batu. We have Congo, the Bantu. We also have places like Rwanda that also has the same name as Ubuntu. We have Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Mali, which also shares one name, that's the Maya. We have places like Ghana, we have the Munchi, Iwa. Even in my tribe, the Igbo tribe, we have philosophies that are also in line with the Ubuntu philosophy as well. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Mobutu, and the Bantu. These are African words that also describe the same philosophy, hold the same space that Ubuntu holds as well, the Ubuntu philosophy holds as well. So it's not a new philosophy, it's not something that is modern, something that just popped up when someone felt like it. No, that's always existed. And it's very essential and it is crucial that we also look inwards, look at our own culture, our own traditions. We will also see that sense of communal living, that sense of collectivity, that sense of community as well. So moving on, we're going to look at the introspection of Ubuntu, as I call it, which is also the levels of Ubuntu. To fully understand what makes an individual whole, what makes a person fully human, or what it makes a person fully an individual. We have to look at the levels of Ubuntu. We have the individual, we have the family, we have the community, we have the society, the environment, and the spiritual. Now, the individual just says that a person is only a person through other people. We've been saying that for a few minutes now, and it is very true. Look at the diagram that we have here. You can see that for a person to be a person, you have different systems around you, and they get bigger. And as a whole, as a circle that it is, I wish I had a board here to really demonstrate what we have here. But as a circle that it is, for you to be whole, for you to be made whole, you have to have this different system, these layers to you, like an onion, basically. When you peel back an onion, you see different layers. All those things make a bulb of onion, but there are different layers to it. So we have the family as well. It extends beyond nuclear ties. So it's not just your nuclear family, your sisters, your brothers, your parents. No, it also includes our extended family, even people in our tribe, people our kinsmen, people in our villages, even our ancestors as well. People that we are related to. It doesn't always have to be by blood, but it can also be by tribe as well. Now we have the community. It emphasizes communal work, interdependence, and shared responsibility. So to be an individual or to be fully human, you're not saying that, oh, it's not my business, it's not concerned when there's a problem in a community, when there's a problem in the society. You're not saying it doesn't affect me, so it's not my issue. No. Ubuntu employs us to focus on communal work. For example, let's say in a community there is no water. You try your very best along with people to either contribute your time or your money or your physical labor to try and bring clean water to that community. And that's the sustainability of most community interventions in social work, being able to include the people in that community in the community interventions or the community planning to ensure that there's a long-term, ensure the longevity rather, or the sustainability of a project. So just like that, Ubuntu is saying the same thing. There should be interdependence. You're not, what's the word? You're not standing alone. We also have that saying that that we always say that Just talks about united we stand, divided we fall. That's it, interdependence. Interdependence. I'm Christian, so I'm going to talk a bit about the Bible. In the Bible, Paul had spoken about how um, different parts of the body, or rather described the church as different parts of the body. That's the same thing as well. There's a dependence that happens for the whole body to function. The heart needs blood. That's the veins. If the veins are not working, the heart will not work because there's no blood being pumped to the veins as well, to the heart. The brain needs the heart. The lungs need the heart as well. The hands need to move. It needs another part of the body, the muscles. It needs the brain to signal the muscle in your hand to move. So that's the interdependence that we can see in the body as well. And a shared responsibility. You understand your duty to the community, you understand your duty to your family, you understand your duty to your country, you understand your duty to the society at large. And next, we have the society. This has to do with the systems we are surrounded by, be it political, economic, global systems, and seeing that these systems are interconnected. Now, I'm going to draw that back to the systems theory. We talked about your political system, your economic system, and the global system. Mind you, these are systems that you are not able to influence, but they influence your life, whether you like it or not, indirectly influence your life. So if there's political instability, it influences your life, your reduced lifespan, maybe less opportunities, economic instability or stability. We can only talk about economic instability, but even stability as well also affects you positively, where you're able to have more business opportunities, you're able to get grants for your ideas. Basically, it's systems that are able to influence, fund, and push African identity and the African future forward. And then the global system, sometimes you can see how systems outside Africa influence relationship between Africa and other countries as well. It could be the global north, and you can see the ways that maybe there's conflict in the global north, and then in turn makes the geopolitics of African international relations a bit difficult, a bit more complicated than it already is. Now we have environment. This is just the core belief that there is no divide. There's no difference between you and the environment. There's no difference between you and nature. The way you take care of your body is the way you should take care of nature. It just tells us to have a sense of environmental justice and a sense of just a consciousness for our environment. We can see how climate change is affecting us. If we have a sense of that environmental harmony, that we are one with nature, what is not good for me is not good for the environment. What is not good for my family is not good for the environment. A sense of sustainability. We're not just trying to end the African generation with us. We're also trying to look into the future and trying to ensure that there is a longevity in the climate in Africa. And then we're trying to also reverse climate change in Africa as well. Then what are we as Africans without spirituality? I think spirituality is a core aspect in our African identity, be it in pre-colonial spirituality or post-colonial spirituality. If you're a Christian, you're Muslim, you're a traditionalist, there's spirituality in African identity. So it's seen that as a human being, we are connected to the living, we're also connected to the spirit, and we're also connected to our ancestors, the land, and to the divine. We're not just seeing ourselves as just the physical being, but also seeing that there's a spiritual aspect to us as Africans. Let's look at the Ubuntu values. Now we have values of relations, we have values of culture, we have values of history, and we have values of indigeneity, we have values of justice and freedom, we have values of holism, values of responsibility, community, and respect. Now, when we talk about our values, I think we have already heard us explaining what a value means, but I would explain it again for the purpose of this. Now, when you talk about value, it means something that is worth something, something that is important, something that has a sense of importance attached to it. And in the more intangible side, we can talk about it could be morals, it could be ethics, it could be traditions, it could be cultures, things that the society stands alongside as rights or something that is worthwhile doing. Now, I will zone in on morals, I'm going to zone in on culture, and I'm going to zone in on tradition. Now, the first Ubuntu value that we have here is relations. This involves honoring our parents, extended family members, and kin in all spheres of life. One thing that is so embedded in African culture and in African tradition is respect for elders. And that's something that Ubuntu does not look over. It also pinpoints that we need to honor our parents, we need to honor our kingsmen, we need to honor extended family members as well. Show them a sense of respect. And things that honor is important as people that, oh, you want to say that you want to keep those close family members close. You cannot be disrespecting someone and expect good things from them or expect a sense of collectivity. No, it has to be a give and take relationship here where you honor these people as well. They are more open to being united with you to move the African identity forward. Now we have culture. That's valuing the indigenous way of life. We can see in recent years, there has been a wave of promoting indigenous knowledge. Just like we're talking about Ubuntu right now and trying to improve the knowledge that we have about Ubuntu. Now, it means valuing indigenous ways of life. That's our language, our food, our dressing, our ethics, beliefs, and our shared knowledge system. Now, valuing it could come in the form of documenting, not allowing maybe a language go extinct. That is a way of valuing your language, that's a way of valuing your indigenous way of life. Two, promoting indigenous knowledge base as well, promoting African knowledge as well, just like we are doing here. Then the next talks about finding pride in African identity and heritage. Now, I think you would see a lot of the times people might not be proud about the African heritage, but it is important and it is paramount that we are proud of who we are as Africans. Because for me, I can say anytime, anywhere that I am proudly African and I am proudly Nigerian as well. And for you that is listening to this as well, you need to say, I am proudly African. We need to be more proud of who we are, the value that we bring to the world, the resources that we bring to the world, the knowledge base that we bring, what we have to offer. We need to find pride in our identity, in our heritage. Our heritage comes in form of our beliefs, our traditions, comes from our language, our food, our dressing. We're not undervaluing that for anything else. Now, our history, Ubuntu really sees it important that we really look back into our history. I think there is a proverb or something that says those who do not know their history are bound to make a mistake twice. I paraphrase, but it's along that line. So it involves looking back to move forward, and not just okay, yeah, we're just going to focus on modern principles or modern ways of life. We bring the ancient and we bring the modern and we merge it into something that is beyond our wildest dreams. We understand the importance of what our forefathers have kept for us or what has been passed down to us. And also understand the evolution of modern technology, the evolution of modern knowledge base, and we merge it, making it a whole and a more holistic identity for Africans. So, like I said, it means merging the old and the new to forge new pathways for us. Now we have justice and freedom. This means upholding the liberation from colonialism, advocating for fairness and equity in politics, economics, and life. That is something that Ubuntu really upholds: liberation, justice, and freedom. That for a community to be whole or for a society to be whole, if there's inequality or a lack of equity, there's going to be friction. There's going to be friction in unity. And Ubuntu does not like disunity, and Ubuntu does not like a separated identity. So it is paramount that we also ensure that there is justice in our society, because we are not free until everybody is free. That's one thing we need to understand. If your neighbor is not free, you're not free. It's only a matter of time before you're also held down in shackles as well. So we must ensure that we advocate for fairness and advocate for the rights of people around us. Now we have holism. It's basically understanding that we are like a circle, we're like a globe. For you to be complete, they are different, like a pie chart, basically. For you to be complete into a complete pie, there are different sectors, there are different sections that make you whole. That means we have to recognize the relationships. So those sectors are found in our relationships with people. So recognizing the relationship between people, the environment, ancestors, and generations to come. So we're not just, oh, like, oh, it's just me, what I want to do. It's fine if you want to do what you want to do, but it's also important that we understand and we really take, really value our relationship. We really put importance on our relationship with people. And we have responsibility. This means understanding that we have a duty to others, future generations, and the environment, and how that should guide our decisions and actions. Next, we have community, and this has to do with advocating for collectivity, cooperation, and mutual support as we work towards a shared goal. And the shared goal as Africans is a better Africa, a greater Africa, a united Africa. Now, last but not least, on the Ubuntu values, we have respect. It means valuing every single individual and our profound humanity. And I want to say something. Respect is something that's inherent to a human, meaning that it's something you're born with. It's not something that you give people out of the compassion in your heart. It's something that every human being is born with. So you have to show and treat people with value, have treat people with respect, people around you, your neighbor, a stranger, another African. We treat each other with respect and really value our profound humanity. So let's look at the Ubuntu principles. We have commonality, we have environmentality, we have dialogue and consensus building. We also have respect and spirituality. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this because every word here has already been talked about in Ubuntu values as well. So communality just emphasizes our shared identity. We are all Africans, or if you're from Congo, we're all Congolese. We are, if you're from Ghana, we're all Ghanaians. We are not different, even if you're from a different tribe, from a different group, we are all the same. We are all Africans, understanding and really like upholding and promoting our shared identity. Also shows that mutual care rather than individualism. So we are showing that mutual aid for our neighbors, for our families, for the community at large. Now, environmentality just talks about climate justice and environmental justice. And as Africans, we are basically saying that, oh, I am not more important than the environment. I am not more important than nature. My comfort is not more important than the future of sustainability in Africa. So Ubuntu views the environment as important for human survival and encourages ecological balance. So there should be a balance where we really, really look at the future of what Africa is supposed to be. We're not just thinking about ourselves, we're also thinking about the future generations. We're also seeing how, okay, these people, we can try to ensure that we give them a better future, we preserve their future, and we ensure that human survival is like we ensure that human survival is our core goal, because we can see how climate change has been basically coming up over the couple of years. Scientists have been talking about it for a lot of years now, but we can see in 2025 it is even more dangerous, it's even more detrimental to human survival. So at this point, nature is bound to extinct humans if we don't treat the environment as important as ourselves. Now, dialogue and consensus building. Now, when you talk about a community or you talk about society, and we are claiming that we are united, we are claiming that we have a sense of collectivity, we need to have dialogue as well. We need to have consensus building. No one is left behind. No one is blindsided. No one is left out of decision making. So we are ensuring that everybody is included. Even the least person that we believe is the least. Even though Ubuntu says that we should respect and see the value in every human being, the inherent value in every human being. So we include everybody and ensure that the results of our decisions promote social unity, promotes, brings together the society. It does not separate, it does not cause division. Now we have respect, like I've said before, it ensures that you respect everybody, regardless of generation, whether the person is younger, whether the person is older, male or female, whether they are very rich or they are poor, whether whatever belief that they have, be it their religious belief, personal beliefs, we show respect for people. We consider their opinions and their beliefs as important. Now, lastly, we'll talk about spirituality. So, spirituality as a principle in Ubuntu, like I've said before, for, for me to be human, I'm also spiritual. For me to be human, I'm also spiritual. For you to see this part of my hand, you also know that there's also a back part of my hand as well. I don't think that's the best description of it, but you have your palm. There's also the back of the palm as well. For me to be human, I'm also spiritual as well. We recognize the spirituality or the inherent spirituality of every human, and we try and view humans as holistic, not just one-sided or not just dimensional or two-dimensional, but we see the multiple dimensions, or the multiple angles that humans can be seen in, or different perspectives that a person's being, a person's human nature can be seen in. Now we have the Ubuntu ethics. I will not dwell too much on this. The first one talks about seeing the strength in numbers. Collective action is so important in progress. Collective action is so important in moving the African future ahead. If we are divided, we'll have different goals. That means the goal will never be to make Africa better or to make Africa greater or to make Africa more united. It to be more nation, it will be more me, it will be more, oh, my country. It's no longer a we thing, it's not a me thing. We should not find its place in African identity. Also, talks about promoting cooperation rather, or collectivism. That is mutual aid, mutual support. The next is a people-centered leadership. Now, when it concerns people-centered leadership, we are talking about a servant leader. For you to be a leader, you have to be a servant first. So the decisions you make or the goals that you set or the interventions or the things that you do as a leader should be based on the decisions of the people, the well-being of the people. So it is not just about your domination, but it's about what the people want, what they need. You're not just focusing on yourself. Your first subject to the people's opinions, your first subject to the people's desires, your first subject to the people's needs. So it's not focused on the leader, it's focused on the people. Now we have the ethic of respect. I will not dwell on that anymore because we have talked about that multiple times. Now the last one is nationhood and promoting peace. Now, this is just us being patriotic to our nation, to our society, and not being divided or allowing tribes or ethnic groups to divide us. Instead, we are more tolerant, we're more on the side of promoting peace amongst people, amongst Africans, amongst people in our country. Now, moving on, we can look at Ubuntu theories. Now, we have the Ubuntu social work, welfare, and development theory. This theory enumerates how social issues and cases involving vulnerable populations should be handled by the social worker, with the focus being on strengthening and not weakening families, communities, societies, and environments. So I think it's very important that when we look at Ubuntu, we also look at the theories that also encapsulate or would also uphold the Ubuntu philosophy. And the social work, welfare, and development theory is something that is also on the same line. So most times when we as social workers, we are pushing for a child to leave the home, it's more likely that a child will go into a foster home a or an orphanage or whatever plan or policy or intervention that the government has in place for said children, or in cases where there is abuse of the child. Ubuntu is not saying that we should keep the child in spaces where the child is being abused. Never. Remember, there is the principle and value of respect and seeing the value in every human being. Ubuntu is just saying that we should also try to ensure that we don't weaken families in the process. Instead, okay, can we try looking at, is there a relative that we can keep, still keeping the child centered in their community, not keeping them far away from where they are truly from, trying to still anchor their roots, even though we keep them away from the abusive environment. It's essential that we do, but we also try and ensure that their roots also deep into their culture, into their tradition as well. So be it, I think that's a situation that we can also look at. But under vulnerable population, we can look at is displaced people, people who, because of war, climate disasters, whatever it is, have been displaced from their communities. We should try as social workers as well to ensure that we also not allow those communities to go extinct, even though they have left their origin, a place of origin, or their original habitats. And the next is the Ubuntu political theory. This theory is based on Sam Kange's 1982 80s book. We talked about the Zimbabwe indigenous political philosophy, where he proposed a maxim that leaders are servant first. Remember when we talked about the Ubuntu principles, we talked about people-centered leadership. That's the same thing here. He's basically proposing that leaders should be servants first. It's not your job to impose decisions on people. We should have that dialogue, we should have that consensus building where the interventions or the projects that we carry out as leaders should be centered on the people, should be centered on the needs of the people. We don't just pick a need that we feel like we should handle and come to a community and handle it. No. We are servants first. We listen to the people. So if you're a future leader or someone that desires to be a future leader, we really need to look into the Ubuntu political theory, where we really understand and really take in this belief that we are leaders, we are servants first before we are leaders. The servant leader, the leader is not before the servant is before the leader. So the clear theme in Ubuntu political theory is political accountability, where leadership is a position to uplift and act on the interests of the people. It's not a position for you to satisfy your own desires or for you to do things that would benefit you. No. When you're in a position of leadership, it's your time to uplift and act in the interest of the people. Now, we also have the Ubuntu social justice, criminal justice, and jurisprudence theory. This theory is basically focused on deterrence. Deterrence means trying to ensure that people don't repeat the same action or people are less likely to repeat an action. Now, it has to do with running, replacement, and compensation, as with apology, forgiveness, reconciliation, and warnings and punishment. So the theory views the family and communities as crucial for justice. We have the orature theory. So it's a term coined by Ugandan literary theorist Pio Zirimu, which describes oral literature. This theory connotes that non-written literature are as powerful and robust as written literature. It emphasizes that African philosophy, theories, models, and what do you call it, frameworks are encoded in our oral traditions, which carry histories and ethics. Next, we can also look at the Ubuntu theoretical framework. So when I was looking at the Ubuntu theory, I noticed that there were similar theories under the Ubuntu theories that could be found under the same headings or titles. So we have Ubuntu social work, welfare and development theory. This theory can be viewed through the lens of other theories like the African social development model, developmental social work approach, or the developmentalist theory, bottom-top approach, or the African environmental theory. The next one under the Ubuntu theoretical framework is the Ubuntu social justice, criminal justice, and jurisprudence theory. This theory connects to the Ubuntu moral theory. The last but not the least is the Ubuntu decolonization theory. This theory can as well be viewed in light of the African Renaissance. The African Renaissance theory, the colonial theory, African decolonization theory, Africhor theory, integrated Ubuntu theory of decolonization. Now let's look at Ubuntu in emerging issues. There are so many misconceptions about Ubuntu philosophy and how it cannot be used, or basically how it cannot be used in modern day or emerging issues, maybe like climate change. We're like, oh, what are we actually talking about when it comes to climate change in Ubuntu? No, it's actually also used in climate change as well. There are multiple issues that Ubuntu can also give insights into, and also add to. Ubuntu is very broad and is very holistic. Now let's look at environmental justice and climate change. So the Ubuntu philosophy is useful in the area of climate change and environmental justice with values like communality, stewardship. Ubuntu promotes environmental stewardship and respecting the land that feeds us, as well as coming together as communities for social action to protect our biodiversity. Very important, very, very important that we show the respect to the land that feeds us. It's only fair. It's only fair that we come together and show that collective action and bring people together for something that benefits the future of Africans. Now we have the mental health crisis. Truly understanding Ubuntu also means understanding the path about having the Ubuntu ideology, which can play in easing the current mental health crisis. With more and more social systems being broken and parts of old systems not being corrected, more generations are isolated from the whole, leading to mental health crises like depression. A lot of the time in cases of mental health issues or mental health crisis, most people who are depressed, they tend to self-isolate. And Ubuntu has never been about that. Ubuntu has never been about um, staying away from the system surrounding you, staying away from family. No, having that ideology or understanding that one, that we fail when the whole has failed, makes us understand that mental health crisis is the responsibility of the whole. So you're not saying, I'm not depressed. I don't know what they're talking about. So, like, they talk about mental health, I'm not depressed. No. If one person is being affected by an issue, then we all have that same issue. We all have that same issue. That's that mutual support, that collectivity that we need to have as Africans, where we understand that if one system is broken, the other systems are not going to work as well. So Ubuntu insists that you are not alone, and it encourages intergenerational healing and evolution. I love Ubuntu in gender relations. So In today's age, where we are in the age of gender wars, Ubuntu understands that some of its systems have failed and overlooked parts of the whole. Ubuntu understands and teaches us that human dignity is collective. Like I've already said, if one fails, the whole has failed as well. So if part of the whole is being diminished, then no one can be whole. The Ubuntu value and principle of respect holds that human worth is non-negotiable. Like I said, it's inherent. It's not something that you, out of the compassion in your heart or out of your goodness as a person that you grant to people. You don't grant it to people. It's non-negotiable. Respect is non-negotiable, and it applies to both genders. So true Ubuntu calls out any system, whether cultural or religious, that denies the humanity of women and calls for relational ethics. So to double down on Ubuntu in gender relations, we can look at the words of Thomas Sankara, where he said that evolution and women's liberation go together. They are not mutually, no, they go together. We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or because of a surge of human compassion. It is a basic necessity for triumph of the revolution. Women hold up the other half of the sky. These are in the words of Thomas Sankara. So you don't grant people respect or grant them humanity out of the kindness of your no. It is inherent and is non-negotiable. And it is paramount that we are also able to call out systems that no longer serve us or systems that have overlooked the vulnerable population as well. Now, we can also see Ubuntu in law, justice, and governance. So Ubuntu sees leaders as first a servant, like I've already said before, the servant leader, someone that takes decisions and carries out actions for communal interest. This ideology is not present in African leadership today, which unfortunately we have to say it is not present in African leadership today. And Ubuntu calls us out for that. How can we build Africa if we are able to operate in unity? And if we operate in disarray? How can we move forward as Africans? How can we move forward as people if we're unable to work for things outside of our own interests? If we talk about independence of several African countries, it was not because someone said, it's all about me. No. People basically came together and said, we are getting liberated together, togetherness. The reason why we have our independence is because there was a collective action, there was a unity that brought about the fight for freedom. So Ubuntu in law and justice gives us a different perspective into human rights and our duty to our communities. It also gives us a filter for laws. What do I mean by that? If a law is not just, if a law is said to be just, then it has to, number one, uphold the humanity of others and respect elders and create unity. So it is, a law is not just if it violates the humanity of others or if it puts aside a certain gender or a certain population, no. But if it disrespects elders or creates divide, then the law is not just. So Ubuntu helps us create that filter when we are thinking about policies, future policies, or amending constitutions. We think about the whole, not just the individual. Because in the process of thinking about the whole, we also think about the individual as well. Now, Ubuntu in technology, with the rise of robotics, AI, and the slow erasure of the human, Ubuntu does not discourage technological advancement. Instead, it welcomes its advancement, or in the same way, it brings light ethical concerns about this. So, like I said, in terms of law and justice and governance, there should be a filter for laws, policies. The same thing with robotics and AI and the rise of technology. We should ensure that we also keep in mind ethical concerns. So I think that technology should serve humanity, not replace it. It should not exploit humanity, should not divide humanity. So Ubuntu urges us to pause and reflect on whether technology honors and uplifts the human. Now, lastly, we're going to look at Ubuntu in social work. Now, Ubuntu is a cornerstone for African social work because it provides a deeply African, Afrocentric framework that centers the colonization of knowledge and the revitalization of indigenous worldviews. So right now in the African social work space, we are trying to ensure that we promote and uphold our indigenous knowledge base, we uphold our African values as well. So Ubuntu views individual as inseparable from their community, family, and environment, which in social work we see as the person in environment, which is something that if you're a social work student, a social work graduate, a social worker, you would have heard about the person in environment. And just encourage us as professionals to consider the complex interplay of the society, family, and cultural dynamics when supporting our clients. We're not just looking at the person and their problem or their presenting problem. We also look at the dynamics that are in play or the causative factors that is in the society, the family, and the cultural dynamics that probably influence the problem that a community is having or the society is having. Now, Ubuntu's emphasis on restorative justice also resonates strongly with social work's rehabilitative goals. So this is where in the criminal justice um, sector, we are trying to ensure that criminals or offenders rather are not dehumanized. They are still given opportunity to be reintegrated into society, where we prioritize healing, trying to find vocational skills for them to learn. Maybe some of them even go to school while in prison or serving their sentence. So when they leave these correctional facilities, they're able to easily reintegrate into society without difficulties. Now, when embedding Ubuntu values in practice, African social work transforms into a culturally grounded discipline that champions dignity, justice, and the interconnectedness of all people. Now, I'm going to end this by really talking about Ubuntu in different areas. And I'm really happy that we have been able to touch Ubuntu in emerging issues, mental health, gender relations, climate or environmental justice. We looked at Ubuntu in social work, Ubuntu in technology as well. It is paramount that we as Africans, we as human beings, really see the depth and the breadth of the Ubuntu philosophy and how well it can be applied and how well we can create compass for policies, compass for interventions, for projects in the society. We're not just relying on our individual understanding, but more or less bringing minds together, rubbing minds together, trying to create collective decisions and collective solutions for our societal problems. And with that, I say a very big thank you for this opportunity to talk on Ubuntu and understanding what Ubuntu is all about. I think this will guide us in the next video. Thank you.